Yeah, great to hear from you, Tom. I'm pleased you're recovering after your long fortnight of diabetes events. Flexible working is really good. What Claire was mentioning about Amazon and stuff, that's interesting. But yeah, everyone, welcome to the diabetes chat evening. The mics are open for people, and we can carry on inviting and chatting about the events that have gone on over the past couple of weeks.
Brilliant, thanks, Rich. Is Tony there? Has he lost connection? I'm not too sure.
Maybe he needs to leave and rejoin because I can't hear him at all.
Yeah.
I can't either.
Does it say co-host on your side? Because it just says listener on
mine.
There's
co-host here on my phone.
And mine.
But there's no noise coming from him. And he's not got his speaker turned off. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. Okay.
Poor Tony describing it as no noise.
We want noise.
I meant, do you know, like you see the little dashes by the name?
Yeah, it's not getting the. He's not getting the
sound. No sound.
Sound
Sorry,
volume.
I was wrong. So Claire, do you want to tell us what was because you were a virtual attender at EASD. What were your highlights?
I think the one that I found the most interesting was the talk on these once a week injectable insulins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I actually put a post out about it on Twitter asking what other people felt about it, because I'm not sure how I actually feel about just doing once a week injections and knowing how much insulin I have to take anyway, whether it'd actually work for me.
Did they actually say if it was really concentrated? Probably not the scientific word for it, but you know what I mean.
They didn't actually say. But you'd still have to do your background insulin, if I remember correctly. So you'd still be doing one injection a day anyway, and then on one day a week you'd have an extra insulin injection to do.
Oh, so I thought it was a replacement for the basal rather than the bolus. Yeah.
I think I was going to say the same.
So I don't know. It's been a couple of weeks since I last looked at it. But
all the studies I saw were, in adults anyway, were looking at it compared to Tresiba. So it was this.
It is background insulin. It is to replace your basal. Yes.
Yeah, that was what I understood. Yeah.
So you would still have to bolus, but it would just take, if you were bolusing, because obviously if it was in some people with type 2 or some of the other types, they might only be taking background, I suppose.
Yeah, that was the one that I found the most interesting, but obviously got the wrong end of the stick.
No. I'm sure you didn't, Claire. Don't say.
So can I just clarify then? So you still would do this particular study would be, or therapy would be, you still bolus for your quick acting foods and things like that, but it was your background. So instead of saying a split dose or one dose a day or whatever, it would be one per week. Is that the thing?
That's
here?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what's people's views on that then? From if you wish to share, like, what do you think of that? Is it quite exciting to see that? Like, that's the movement of where it's going. It'd be interesting to see how it all works, because say, I don't know, when I was on pens, my background was around 48 a day. So it would be really interesting to see how it kind of works for that duration of the week. I guess it would be calculated. But reducing from 7 injections or 14 to 1 is quite astonishing, right?
Yeah, I think if you take, depends what you take at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
Personally, I'd be more likely to forget taking it once a week than taking it every morning,
Yeah.
So I take my long acting in the morning, I get up, take my long acting and take my bolus for breakfast. I just do both at the same time.
I wonder, did they say, anybody who watched that, whether it was more aimed at people with type 1 or with type 2? Because I could see with people with type 2, because they still produce some of their own insulin, it would, do you know what I mean? It would give them some adaptability around it. Whereas my concerns as a type 1 would be I'm committing myself to a basal 7 days in advance.
I think I'd have to go back. I didn't watch the ISPAD one, but the stuff I'd read before, mainly it was for type 2. They were looking at to try and improve the, I guess, the efficacy of taking insulin. If you only had to take it once a week, they were less likely to forget. Particularly maybe if you're taking a GLP-1 as well, which you take once a week, maybe you just take them both together.
Yeah, I tuned into that one myself, and it was more aimed for type 2 diabetes.
Okay. And did they say if it would be, like you're saying, the volume that you would take, would it be massive, or I'm assuming it'd be really concentrated, so you wouldn't be taking a massive shot?
I'm trying to remember the exact details now, but I remember at the time I was interested in it from some positives and negatives. So I think for people who are just on a basal insulin, it had some benefits, and you were less likely to forget. It would be easier for maybe a caregiver who doesn't know much about diabetes, because it's just once a week. So that was a positive. Now, I did have concerns if someone was taking a once weekly injection, and then if they had to go to hospital. Inpatient diabetes care, because in my experience of caring for my dad with type 2 diabetes, and he was on Tresiba, and a lot of staff, they weren't familiar with it. So I was thinking, how are you going to educate hospital staff if someone was on a once weekly injection? So it was interesting. I think there were 2 types of insulin. I think there were Isodec was one of the names.
Yeah, Isodec was one of them. I've just been looking at the screenshots I did.
Yeah. So it was interesting. So I had tuned into that one in particular, but it was more specific for type 2.
But I suppose also, if it's an injectable, I know some people have, if they've got disabilities or, you know, impairments of any kind, they have like a district nurse coming in to give you injections. So I suppose if it was once a week, that would be really labour saving as well.
Yes, and I think
if people variability in time as well. Do you know what I mean? That the district nurse isn't going to call at 9 o'clock every morning.
Yeah, exactly. So that, and I think because a lot of people, if they're on a GLP-1 injectables, and that's like once a week, so that you could kind of have them on the same day, so make it easier to remember.
Oh, that's interesting.
If I'm recalling as well, there was in terms of, I guess, cons for the time being, it was linked also to the potency, in the sense that obviously on the last couple of days is not as effective as it is when you just inject. So you really need, if I recall, because I attended it the last year, not this year, because it was already presented at EASD and I haven't reread on it, so don't trust my memory, but somehow it kind of rings a bell that they were saying you need really to be very bang on time and on target, that you couldn't play around with kind of saying, oh, well, you know, it's Sunday. Well, if I take it, as long as I take it on Sunday, I'm fine. That's not the case. I think you needed to really keep a sort of specific timeline for it to be the most effective. But they are working on it, obviously.
Yeah.
So, and the same, for example, if you go on a holiday and then, oh, can I have the injection one day prior, you know, or one day later, you know, there's still things that they need to clarify and test for.
Yeah.
Well, I think the interesting question was about, you know, how, you know, is it the equivalent of, you know, if you take 20 units now. Do you still take 20 units? Is just 7 times as strong. But
yeah,
because obviously the big the greater volume you inject, the more risks there are, aren't there, of it leaking out or any of those things, or it going in the wrong place. Or because I know my dad used to take Toujeo, which was a U300 for his background insulin.
Yeah.
So and that's one, isn't it, that's used now. If you have, if you need a high basal dose, then sometimes Toujeo is prescribed, because it means you can take less volume.
Yeah, well, that's like most of definitely the short actings come as 200s.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the reason that there's all this thing about not using insulin from pens. Somebody said, oh, you could have the wrong strength, but I thought, well, that'd be the same if you were using a cartridge or a vial. But I know that was one of the reasons that they said. So it could be that, but sort of like 7 times is a lot. I've never heard of a 700 insulin, but could be.
Well, I mean, the amount of basal that I take, I'd be up in the 200s on a weekly injection.
Yeah, and that's hell of a lot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, I wonder that. Oh, it's very interesting though. And was there anything else, Claire, that was, if that was your sort of like interesting, you were really intrigued by, anything that surprised you?
The one chat I went to was actually talking about non-autoantibody immune type 1 diabetes.
Oh, right.
Which I need to actually do some more research into. Because as most of you know, I've been querying for the last 2 years whether I'm actually type 1 or type 2, and somebody keeps telling me I'm type 1, then somebody else keeps telling me I'm type 2.
You're a mystery, Claire.
So, I mean, all my antibodies are coming back as negative, but my C-peptide is coming back as type 1. So, I need to do some more research into that.
Yeah, it's worth tagging Shivani Mishra, because I think they say about 10% of those diagnosed with T1 don't show any antibodies.
So
it's quite high.
But yeah, there was one. I don't think the actual talk was about that, but it touched on that, and I thought, oh, I wonder if that is me, and I need to do some more research on it, but I haven't done it yet, but I will do.
Oh no, very interesting. As we've got you, Nat, sorry, I'll put you on the spot because I know you love when we do that to you. What were your highlights? Because you were at ISPAD, weren't you?
Yeah, I was a voice at ISPAD this time. I covered a lot of the lectures on screening, on the benefits of detecting type 1D earlier, because you have less DKA, you can prepare the families with mental health support and education. And when possible, you can delay onset by around 3 years, which is amazing. Imagine having 3 more years without diabetes. It's just crazy.
Wow, you see, I could have a very controversial.
I know.
Because I'm sort of like, don't get me wrong, but at the moment there's not treatment freely available in a lot of countries.
I was about to say that, yeah.
The UK, but they're starting screening, but you've no potential necessarily that you're going to get any treatment.
Yeah. So what do you do when you know you can develop diabetes in 10 years?
And you're sort of medicalizing a kid's life. And I sort of think, God, the longer you can just be a normal kid, you can spend enough years in hospital appointments, doctor's appointments, your parents worrying, or do you know what I mean? Being paranoid what's happening. And yeah, but once there's readily available treatment, I think it changes for me.
Yeah.
But until then, I'm a bit, if I had children personally, I wouldn't be screening them at the moment.
I totally see what you mean, but my daughter, for example, she's 13, she doesn't want to get screened.
Yeah.
And I'd love her to be screened because we could discuss that and I could prepare her, even if she knows so much more about diabetes than any other kid her age because of me.
And I think you're right, Nat. I mean, I did screen my kids, and for me, it was more it was selfish. I just wanted to see if I was responsible. You know, if I doomed them somehow. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
I wouldn't call that selfish, but
no.
Sorry,
I just wanted to know. And then so we did the ELSA studies in the UK, and then when they started offering it for adults, my husband did it as well because he just wanted to. He said, "Well, the kids did it, so I might as well do it, even if your interference is not there." So it's completely personal, and I totally understand people who do not want to go through it. And to go back to what you were saying earlier, Flipper, I mean, currently wherever screening is offered, and I know at EASD and probably at ISPAD as well, they mention it quite a lot. It's mostly in European countries currently that it is being offered, where they supposedly offer psychological support.
Yeah, and Israel as well.
I think the US as well is starting to do something, in Canada, but so you know but I think somehow the supports need to be there, and we know that for normal services of diabetes we don't have psychological support. So but if by this way of doing things, you know, psychology can be incorporated into the support team, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Mental health support should be there. It must be there.
Yeah. And I suppose I can't remember the number. Is it if you've got 3 antibodies, you're going to be diagnosed within the next 2 years or something?
You can be screened either for genetic, you can do either genetic screening and or autoantibody screening. And if you have 2 or more autoantibodies, then you will potentially develop type 1 diabetes within 10 years.
Because 10 years is a long time, and I think that
it is.
Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like you may never develop it if you've say if you've got 1 antibody. I know that's not the 2 that they're saying, but you're still in that sort of half limbo there.
But in Israel, for instance, they decided that with just 1 autoantibody and genetic risks, you were in the risk group.
Okay.
It depends on the countries.
Yeah. I think
that's interesting, isn't it, Philippa? Because obviously, I mean, you know, that. So it's my 5th anniversary tomorrow. So I was diagnosed at 51, but my father had type 1. So imagine if they'd screened me when I was young and I had an autoantibody showing, I might have been worrying about it for 40 years.
Yeah.
I think without that, I think I'd like it. I think what you say, I like a little bit more certainty that it's the development and some ability to delay onset.
Yeah,
as Philippa was saying. I think,
and I suppose because I was about 30 late 20s, 30 when I was diagnosed, and a bit like you, Gillian, I sort of think, God, I could have had a long wait, and I would have been, like being monitored all that time, whereas I happily went through my university teens and university and early 20s not giving a hoot about it, which I'm quite happy about.
I mean, I know when I was young, whenever I was unwell, my dad always had me and my brother pee on a stick, one of the cleaning sticks, just to check that there wasn't anything there, because he wanted to be sure that. But yeah, once it got to sort of 18, 19, we didn't do that anymore because we thought the risk point was past, really.
But I suppose the point with that is you're just checking when you think that you're worried that you could be developing it.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Rather than there's no signs. But yeah, I noticed that you did a lot of your posts, which were brilliant on Twitter, Nat, on the different screenings and things like that. So what other things were there? Was there much on development of new treatments or?
they talked about stem cells as well, about combination therapies to preserve the better cell function, of the potential for genome editing to create hypoimmune islets for transplantation, so that you don't need immunosuppression. So there are so many things on the way, so many things coming. We're living really exciting times right now, I think.
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot going on at the minute, and it's just waiting to see what comes to the fore and to reality.
And at the same time, you have people who don't have access to the basic treatment and care. So there's such a gap between what we hear and the real access for everyone in the world.
Yes, yeah, because it is starting to get more two-tier, isn't it? As the sort of, well, I call it developed world, but you know, that's being derogatory to others. Moving on to like hybrid closed loops and stuff like that. And as you say, there's people who can't even get insulin, let alone anything else, which is bad. And I also read, was it yesterday or today? I can't remember. I may have read it today because I've not been following Twitter every day. That there was a session on stigma.
Yeah,
you did a really
by
good thread on.
Jane Spit. Am I saying her name right? Spit?
I'm not sure if it's spelt or spit. I know who you mean.
Yeah,
I'm the worst person for names.
yeah. She talks about the
Jane Spate.
Yeah, she talks about the end diabetes stigma. The work she's been doing for over a year now. And she asked everyone to take the pledge to end diabetes stigma. So please, everyone, if you haven't taken the pledge already, please go to enddiabetesstigma.org and sign the pledge, because it's really important that we all work on moving myths and changing the image diabetes has everywhere in the world.
Yeah, and improving people's experience of it as well in the process, which is brilliant. And were there any bits that you saw that you weren't expecting to be as interesting as they were? Do you know what I mean? Not something. I always think there's always something you turn up to and you think, oh my God.
I just saw two lectures on mental health and diabetes, and I was not at all impressed. But I have other lectures to cover, so it's not finished for me. Carry on. But I was really happy with all the lectures that I could watch.
So have you still got like online access and you're working your way through?
Until December, I think. I can't remember, or early January. I can't remember. Yeah.
That's interesting.
I really appreciate how Nat is so dedicated with summarizing in her tweets.
I know.
And I totally agree also with end diabetes stigma, because it really helps in changing our behaviors as well. And in one of the talks by Dr. Michael Harris and Jill, they mentioned that behaviors are drivers to change also in diabetes management. So I really I vouch for that it's very important, the behaviors, how we see things, our attitude. It really changes a lot with our diabetes management.
Totally. And self-stigma as well, because we're tough on ourselves as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi. I wanted to just add on a little bit regarding the screening. We all kind of jump from, okay, I'm screened if I'm positive, or my child is positive, or a relative. We're immediately thinking about cure or delay or a solution. I looked at it from a very different perspective. I do have a child who has type 1 diabetes, and I know we caught it late due to COVID. She was in London, I was in Saudi, so I didn't get to see her for almost 10 months. And that delay, I feel, has cost her time lost, because type 1 diabetes now, we can't just see it from the day it was diagnosed, rather the time it was developing into that diagnosis, the stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So I'm kind of really leaning towards screening so that families can pick up the first point of from when onwards that you need to keep in. For my own child, I do feel that, oh my gosh, would things have turned out differently in certain other areas of her life if we had known that this was about to come upon us? It's a different sort of outlook.
But I'm sort of, I don't know how old your daughter is.
She's now 26, and when she was diagnosed, she was 22, 23.
Do you think your point of view would be different? And this I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Is if she had been tested when she was 6. So you were waiting for 16 years.
You won't believe this, but I've actually done A1Cs on all 3 of my kids on and off. Just because I'm the first one in my family. It's not a thing that I bring, I have carried forward from someone else. This is something that has started with me. And because of the fact that she was in London, I was here. Her last 5-6 years, I don't know, because she was in university and school. She was in a boarding school. So I didn't watch over her as closely as I did with the boys.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then she's the one who turns up with that positive diagnosis in the end. She never went into DKA because we did pick it up. But when we did pick it up, her A1C was already at 12.4.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are certain things that wouldn't have turned out the way they did in her last year when she was doing her master's. And that 1 year, I'm pretty sure things would have been different had we already known about, it's going to come.
I think it is one of those things that it's a very personal thing.
True.
And I suppose from my point of view, I do think some people, the way the test is being offered, are just taking it, not considering what will happen if they get I think a lot of people take tests assuming that they're not going to get a bad result from it.
Yep.
And then they suddenly do. Do you know how, I'm just wondering how prepared people are for that?
Yeah, I think that's what we were discussing. A lot of mental health support, anxiety support. And also you have to look at the numbers. In the Israel study that Professor Moshe Phillips showed us, out of the 3,300 plus people tested, families, only 14 were actually considered positive.
Oh my goodness.
So I know for that 14, it's their whole life. But the support that is needed is relatively small to the number of people that would actually turn up. I mean, that's just happened to be with that particular sample of 3,000 plus. What if the sample was 30,000? What if it was 300,000? Then the numbers do get bigger.
But it is a really, really small percentage.
I have another question. The screenings, how long are they valid? So if you screen at age 2, are they still valid at age 9 or 10 or 11?
Yes, they are. Because they're talking 5, 10, 15 years.
But when I was at a talk on this, and I said the same, because in the UK, what they were proposing at one point, it's not in situation, was, I think it was between, off the top of my head, and it's about a year or 2 ago, it was screening between the ages of, it was something like 6 and 13, but they would just screen the once. And I said, well, what if you don't have the antibodies at 8 and that's when you're screened, but by 13 you could have? And they said, well, yeah, we're not going to catch everybody.
Yep. This was brought up there as well. This was brought up in ISPAD as well.
I think that's another thing, that you're not catching everybody. It's not like a genetic thing. where you either have that gene or you don't have that gene. It's just saying, well, at the moment you don't have it.
Well, what I understand is that usually you can detect autoantibodies very early, like around 2 years old. It's the peak time. In Israel, for instance, they decided to test at 18 months old and then 5 years old.
Yeah, and there's also percentages regarding the population and how it works. So if I'm not wrong, if you are due to develop it in kids, it's easy to spot before roughly 10. And then boys have a tendency to be higher in terms of probability. And then after the age of 10, it drops for both sexes, but then it goes slightly higher, but not by much for girls because of puberty and the hormones upheaval. Because it's, I mean, obviously, the common factor here is diabetes. And when you attend one of those conferences, sometimes you attend something completely different. But if you put things together, so I was interested to find out if there were a bit more about the etiology of diabetes, that is to say, how it comes to manifest itself, if it is due to the environment, if it is due to what we eat, or what sort of viruses and bacteria we are being exposed to. Spoiler alert, they don't know.
Yeah,
But it was really interesting to go there. And then you have, the question they're discussing about antibodies, and then they're telling you, but also, for example, if parents, one of the parents is T1D, if it is the woman, and if she becomes pregnant, then there's slightly chance for her to pass it off to her offspring than if it's the dad with type 1 diabetes, which also is fascinating. So I think somehow where we are, we just have, small pieces of the puzzle. It's also a very complex landscape. And I don't know if anyone knows everything about it.
Yeah. No, I remember a few years ago when there's a higher chance, but it's not massive, a higher chance of a male passing it on rather than female, because I always assumed it would be the same or the opposite way round, just in my head. But I think it's like you say, there's so many factors we don't know. But I wonder if this will help discover them, like what sets it off, because at the moment, before this testing, they didn't know who was going to develop it, so you couldn't look for factors because it had already happened. It'd already been triggered before you find it. But I wonder now if they are getting people that have started to get the antibodies, that they'll be able to study them to see what actually triggers do you know what I mean? The actual flipping them.
Oh, totally, because, the more you kind of get testing, the more you can ask questions, the more you can identify and try to find out if there is a pattern. If it is because there's a change in, I don't know, you were exposed to a virus in the food you are eating, if it is at a molecular level, they might be able to identify something, and that will be the marker that will drive, in the future, how to diagnose this. But so it's, we're living at exciting times. We may not be the recipients of as much as we would like to be, but the future is bright somehow.
Yeah, no, that's really great to know that. So, Alex, what were your highlights?
Oh, so
Put you on the spot there.
No problem. So for those who don't know me, so I'm Alexa. I attended EASD in Madrid since I was in early September. I did posted some tweets on the 18th of September if you want to find them. So one of the things I had a kind of mark and highlighted in the program was there was a session about sex and diabetes, and everybody who knows me knows that's one of my area of interest. And it was a bit of a disappointment what they presented. Nothing really new, no sort of remedies, I guess I was kind of after, some routes to explore, in particular when it comes to female sexual dysfunction, so FSD, because obviously for men it's slightly different, by using some cardiovascular medicines, because very often it's linked to erectile dysfunction, and nowadays that's kind of, well, there are ways to remedy it, but for the woman, that's not the case. And sadly, currently, they're not offering us much. So that was a bit of a disappointment. But the one I was extremely interested into, and it wasn't planned again. That was just me wandering around the conference and then noticing on the spotlight stage. So there were two endocrinologists. One was Canadian, the other one was from Czechia. And basically they were arguing the use of GLBT-1 in type 1 diabetes. And one was doing the pro and the other one was doing the cons. And it was 45, well, the debate lasted about 20 minutes. They had kept 20 minutes for question, and obviously it overran because everybody was really interested. And that was just fascinating because basically, they were just explaining what they do, and very often both of them, as a disclaimer, say, I am using it in my practice. It's not because I'm representing the cons that I'm not going to do it, but I'm going to tell you why currently, as per where it stands, what are the risks. And that's probably why we should potentially wait to have more data to be able to include it as a tool in our toolbox, basically. Because the other one, the Canadian, actually, that was the only time Frederick Banting was mentioned, and there was this picture that was also being published, which I thought was really great. And he just opened up his argument saying, well, Fred Banting and Fred Best, they would just have said, well, yes, there's another tool to tackle diabetes, use it. So that's why I'm using it. And obviously, everything when people are talking about, a glycemic DKA, or, we can tackle this. We just need to do some close monitoring. That's feasible. Obviously, there are some side effects. So depending which one you use, you either develop gastrointestinal issues or UTIs. So again, it's just a question of monitoring and ensuring you have some medicine to tackle it.
Yes.
When it does but I don't want to say put through actually, but who have been using them have had very good results. They have improved their HbA1c, they have improved their targeting range, and obviously the icing is really looking forward, because as insulin aspart stands nowadays, as we all know, doesn't really tackle the facts that we tend to put on weight. So that was really the highlights of what I attended.
So if it was offered to you, would you
take it?
Yeah.
And some of you know me. Some I'm not. Well, my BMI is 29, so I'm I'm chubby. I won't say I'm obese, but you know, I carry a bit of, you know, flesh around me. I'm a curvy lady. But yes, because you know, it's more for the obviously the physicals that will probably, you know, help, you know, making me feel sexier than you know, in particular with my husband, or just because I'll be able to wear something a bit more close to my body than what I do actually. But it's mostly because, you know, you have your insulin requirements is dropping, and yeah, you spend more time in range. I mean, well, that's all what we want. It's to be as close to a normal pancreas as possible.
Yeah.
So yes.
I suppose also, and I get mixed up between the these type of drugs, you know, like I can't remember the letters off the top of my head, but is this the one that it also provides cardiovascular protection as well, or is that not the SGLP1s? Is that one of the other ones? Because that has quite a lot of benefits as side effects for kidneys and heart and things like that.
GLP-1RA also and was originally used more for people for type 2 who had CVDs. Yes.
Yeah.
And they say it prevents dementia as well. So it's all good.
Yeah.
Well, it's preventing. I don't think it's a cure. I think somehow we all know that dementia has been nicknamed type 3 diabetes because you develop insulin resistance. So I think it's just a slowing down of the process. Yeah, because sadly I don't think it's again, dementia is, I don't think there's a cure for it. Somehow, because it happens in all age, yeah, there may be, I think there are more studies to try to prevent it than to cure it. But again, I've never been onto the dementia website there, so that's just my take on it. And as people have understood, participating and attending in those conferences.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've just jumped back up to the panel, Alex. Was there any discussion about euglycemic diabetic ketoacidosis in this? Because I'm somebody who's been asking to get onto GLP-1s and what have you, and they keep on being told, we're worried about the risk of you developing euglycemic ketoacidosis. Was there any discussion of that? Because I just heard you mentioning about the weight loss, because for myself with a 38 BMI, I'm sort of like gimme. The one problem that I'm hearing is from Britain, you're told then you've got to lose your pump as well.
So there was a mention of it, Mark, but it wasn't, they didn't go into much details about it. So, but what they were saying is obviously if you have a glucose monitor, that's something that could be, monitored and prevented potentially. So, what I'm just hearing obviously is that so one was, as I say, one was practicing in Canada, the other one was practicing in Czechia. So the rules are different from Britain. Obviously, here we are dependent on the NHS. You will go privately, potentially you may be able to obtain what you want. I don't know. But I think until somehow the NHS is taking the stand that there's not enough data, so we're not going to have it in our toolbox for the time being, unless you manage to convince someone to do it. It's a bit like for women, right? Menopausal women, we are kind of asking when it comes to MHT, so menopause hormone replacement therapy, when we're asking for some testosterone, they don't want to give it to us. You have to find someone who would like to do it off label. So yes,
I think it's one of those things that's got to be just pushed, really. I mean, it's like I don't know, it might take a lot of heart from how the guys who who did a lot of work with TIDE, you know, the eating disorders, and maybe it needs a group of us, because there's a lot long chats are happening under the GB Doc WhatsApp group about this sometimes, and it's just getting a group to say to the diabetic consultative community, there's a number of us, please load guinea pigs here for you. It's just something that I know I'm trying everything, and the problem is I need appetite suppressants, because I get eat the fridge hypos all the time. But anyway, I can it's my sort of like thing whenever I ask to go to DDoc, it's what I always look out for, and never quite get the blurbs right on the talks, which is my pain about this. But anyway, I'll shut up now. Sorry.
Yeah, I just want to follow on there what Alex was saying, because I tuned into a few of the talks on complications and diabetes, and I was kind of looking at both type 1 and type 2 because of my experience of caring for type 2, and definitely the SGLT2 inhibitors and the GLP-1s, they have found some cardiovascular and kidney function benefits in slowing down complications for type 1, but there definitely was an ethics over prescribing it. I know with the SGLT inhibitors, there's a high risk of decay, so that's one reason. But they are being prescribed for people who don't have diabetes, who do have cardiovascular issues. I do know that, and some. Yes, because I actually know some people who have been prescribed them. So from my point of view, I suppose I was very interested in where the science is going.
Yeah.
And for kind of getting more info. And I do know of 1 or 2 people who have type 1 diabetes, and they have been given off-label for the GLP-1 because they probably have some other conditions. So it's borderline. So I think what you were saying as well, Alex, was very interesting. So it could be with jurisdictions and prescribing, but yeah, I suppose the science is very interesting and where it's going. So yeah.
The other thing that I've learned about Ozempic and Mounjaro last week when I was at diabetes clinic is that they can't prescribe it if you've got proliferative retinopathy in your eyes, because they can't prescribe it for me.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so it can. Is that because the drug actually affects or could make it go faster, or is it just because it could reduce dramatically your blood sugars, which would have a bad effect on your eyes? If that.
Yeah, I think that was what they were actually saying at my diabetes clinic last week, that it could make my eyes worse because of the amount that my blood sugar would drop by and the weight that I'd lose. But again, that's something else that I've got to look into.
I was going to say, you'd have thought there'd be one way, do you know, like to monitor you just more closely?
Well, like I was saying to Tom and Rich a couple of weeks ago, I was supposed to have had an eye appointment at the hospital in December last year, because I am under the hospital for my eyes, not the eye screen in place. It finally came through for the 3rd of October this year. They're running about 10 months behind.
God, that's awful.
And my appointment's actually on Thursday this week because I had to cancel the first one because I was on holiday. But they're running about 10 months behind at the hospitals at the moment, or they are in my area anyway.
That's annoying. Doing that, but
it's going back to the postcode lottery, isn't it?
Yeah. Tom, we haven't got you. I don't know if you're there or listening. What were your highlights from ISPAD?
I am here. I am listening. Really fascinating chat. Thank you so much, guys. Just quickly, was anyone else that wanted to share their experiences before I do? I want to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity. So, because I can always talk last, you know me. But Joe or Caroline, I think you're the last two. Azra obviously jumped on as well. Any of you guys want to share any of your thoughts? Appreciate it, Flip, and I will definitely add. But did any of you guys want to say anything?
I just want to say it's been amazing to meet fellow voices, and yeah, I would like to encourage others who are listening to try and join DDoC Voice. There are other conferences and that would be open, and it would be wonderful to, to join and network with fellow type ones and other type ones and other people living with diabetes as well.
Definitely. What was your highlights, Joe? Being at ISPAD, what did you particularly take away from the conference? What did you learn, or what did you go back home and think, wow, that was really interesting?
Yeah, so one of the seminars sessions that I really am interested was about the behaviors by Dr. Harris. So I really appreciate how, if we, like, for example, if we do positive thinking, positive psychology, it can be a good change towards our diabetes management. So that for me, that's one of my takeaways, and also ending diabetes stigma. Then for me, those I'm more into the psych aspect, so I really appreciate those insights.
Yeah, 100%. I can see Cargo's put 100% there, and I think she's come off mute, because me, Caroline, and Linda were in that symposium alongside yourself, Joe. And Cargo, did you want to add on to that? Because it was a really special chat, wasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I loved it too. It was this talk about behavioral therapy and language matters all in one. And both of the speakers just talked all the way through this session about things like things we want to hear, and the way they talked or instructed. It was the title was like I don't get it so long. Behavioral therapies for busy healthcare professionals or something like that. And it sounded like tips and tricks how to treat kids and adolescents and teenagers with diabetes. And they talked about a lot of things I would have loved to hear from my endos at that time. And I was too old. I was already 17 from my parents. What wasn't that much to talk about. And so the way they do it in the positive way and in a totally chilled and relaxed way, without blaming, without wanting too much from the kids, and giving tips how to talk to them in a open-minded way, so they just can relate and take what you want to follow the therapy they have to do, because there's no way around it. It was just amazing. So that was definitely the best session for me and in the whole conference. And the most touchiest thing to add this was the DDoC symposium with the talk of Nathan. I was that was totally amazing. It showed the disparities in this world, and that is always the topic that touches me the most. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. There were a few sort of similar symposiums, and Nathan obviously touched about it. I'm just trying to think of the one I went to. I think there was one called Inequities in Diabetes Care, and it talked about like the how access in different parts of the world, and how important technology is, and that they need it, and there should be no barriers, and it was like sort of concluded in the evidence saying that technology provides the best care for children, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it doesn't matter your background or how rich or poor you are, there should be no barriers. Everyone deserves the best care, treatment, tech, you know what I mean? no matter where you are. And that particular talk looked at like data in Senegal, where they don't have pumps and CGMs, averagely use about 2 BG checks a day. Yeah, you know what I mean? There are some common themes coming out of the whole conference, talking about technology and how impactful it is, how it helps improve diabetes care management, how it looks to improving in time and range, decreases HbA1c, but also like quality of life, and I think that's so important, right? And that symposium, Cargo and Joe, that we went with Linda, you know what I mean? It was just so fascinating, and I would probably say was the best. And I actually said that when I spoke, didn't I? And they said that they set the tone, didn't they, with an image of 2 people sort of looking at each other, and their message was like, the picture doesn't always share or like tell the full story, the true context or experience, and relating it to diabetes, like when you see someone's data, that doesn't give you the full picture of them, you know what I mean, their sort of quality of life, their mental state, health status, etc. And I just thought it was really, really interesting, and how they kind of said that that the sort of behaviors will lead to the outcomes, and that's the way we should sort of direct, and which just hit home for all 4 of us in the room. I think we kind of looked at each other, is how they kind of said not to address the person in front of them by just like looking at their numbers. You know what I mean? We're not defined by just numbers. You know what I mean? Like there's more, we're more than numbers. And I know James is on the call. He says it so many times as a DSN and his team. So yeah, and it was interesting. There was a particular slide, wasn't it, that there's some data, and it looked at someone kind of spiking up a little bit or something, and Dr. Harris, I think, said, is it Natalie Bellini, her research, that basically when you come into clinic, and James can verify this as well, when you come into clinic, it should be like, hey, how are you, and how's things been, or you know what I mean, and in that particular data screenshot of, there were a few spikes, and instead of kind of like, oh, what's that, and why are we high, what did it should be more like, did you have a nice time with your friends there? Like, you know what I mean? Address it in the right sort of way, build that relationship, and then move on to sort of strategies. And you know what I mean? The biggest thing for me coming out of ISPAD, I knew elements of it, but speaking to so many DDoC voices from all over the world, being in person was fantastic. Meeting them, hearing about disparities across the whole world. We have it in the UK, and I explained it. I did, but hearing it across other parts of the world is really scary. And I think there was a particular slide that said 10 to 15% of people don't even have insulin, let alone the technologies like CGMs or blood glucose meters, or they're not diagnosed and people die. I think Joe in the DDoC symposium, Nat, I think, said about 1 million people in her area, like either was it undiagnosed or they died. And it's just really sad, isn't it? It's really sad. So yeah, they were my takeaways. Sorry, I ranted.
No, brilliant. And the point of not looking only at the numbers, but at the context was really impressive, and yeah, very important, because that's the slide with the spike of the HbA1c, I think it was.
Yes.
That resulted because of some familiar problems this kid had. And that wasn't explained by the numbers, but just by the context you would have to look at. And they really encouraged the healthcare professionals to look at the context and not only at the numbers.
Yeah.
That was a very important takeaway from that session too. Yeah.
Absolutely. I personally believed in the last couple of years getting more tuned with my diabetes. I think the psychological impacts, I think that's the biggest thing for me. I think if you feel good and you feel positive, like, that probably contradicts like with diabetes because it's relentless, isn't it? But if you don't feel good about yourself and your diabetes, then I think the rest is quite hard to like try and manage. So I think mental health is so important, and I think that was really spectacular to hear from them. And I did speak to Jill and Michael after, and I said, we're talking about diabetes chat, and I was like, what are you doing next year? Please come on. And they were like, yeah, we will. So yeah, they were great. Does anyone, Flip, do you think it'd be good, any of the other guys that went, does anyone want to share a little bit about DDoC, do you reckon, Flip? Just like from the DDoC symposiums?
Go for it.
Like any reviews of that? I know you briefly mentioned it then, Kago, but Azra or Joe, Gago, Nat, Ola, I know you went to EASD, but and Alex, but did you guys want to summarize any of the DDoC symposiums?
I'd like to point out the Women's Language Matters document that was presented at the same time as DDoC Symposium, but it wasn't presented at the symposium.
Go for it, yeah.
And that was the language that is used when a female in India and other parts of the world, when a female is diagnosed with diabetes, what the implications are and what sort of language she gets to hear. Who's going to marry you? Who's going to, who's going to be able to help you support, especially if it's a female who's not at an earning age? How do the parents, how do other family members react to the financial burden that's going to be brought in? That I thought was very impactful. It was, I did post some of the reels from that particular symposium, but it was presented by Jazz from Diabesties as well. And that was very, very impactful. And I actually heard a lot of positive from the doctor's side in that audience who were listening, and they said, we need to rethink our language when we are talking to the families after the diagnosis.
I second Astra. I believe that language matters is very, very important. And because it really helps in how we view ourselves and how we have better health outcome and taking good care of ourselves. And from the DDoC symposium, I would say like I really am inspired with Taylor Appletoft's, his art, how advocacies can come in different forms, and it can be through art and through others through their own, like Lashmi. He is the ISPAD hero. In spite of his visual disability, he's still very on fire in working for the community of diabetes people. And also from the DDoC Symposium, we have Ines, where even if some of us struggle in sports, there are ways how we could deal. And she made a handbook together with a team of people about sports and T1D. With Jodsana, she also shared like about the screening, the importance of screening in India for T1D. Then I remember for Mohammed Sayam, of course, in Gaza, it's been a crisis, but in spite of that, it's very important to have collaboration. Because when we involve more PWDs, it can help create better framework when it comes to policy change. So yes, Nathan also talk about warriors in Africa, and together it's about collaboration and uplifting one another. Yeah, so yeah, that's about it. So it's a good DDoC symposium.
Thanks for that, Ashra.
And
anybody else got anything they want to say?
And Joe as well.
I just wanted to say for EASD we had so again Appleton, who presented his art and also told his story. And gosh, my mind is going blank. We had Laura, who was talking about pregnancy, so she's based in Italy. Diksha mentioned the work that she's doing in India. And there was someone else, but I can't remember who that is. So I'm going to stop there. But obviously, if anyone is interested in earrings the symposium, we can provide links to them. They're still available on YouTube, so let us know. And yes, you can listen to what has been said if you are interested.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Anything else you want to add, Tom?
I just think it's a fantastic global community. What Bastian and the team do to bring people from all over the world. I've known DDoC for a few years, and I'm going this time as a DDoC voice for the whole week and meeting people. And we had a workshop, and we went for a meal the first night. We got to know each other. There was like Stein playing the guitar, which is great fun, and we were singing and dancing, and really just connecting with people. You know what I mean? And I love always going to conferences and events and stuff like that. And but I always like the extra stuff, like that's what fills my cup. All them extra moments, like meeting people, socializing and connecting, and I just learned so much, and from all over the world. And there are only a couple of us from the UK, which is really nice actually, because then we could learn about other parts of the world. You know what I mean? So yeah, please go check out DDoC. You can head to their website, which is ddoc.org, I think.
Yeah, I think it is.
I should have prepared that before.
And I think wasn't Bastian saying that the applications for ATTD and for people who are UK residents for the Diabetes UK conference will open at the beginning of November. So
yes.
Keep an eye out.
Yes, he did. Yeah, so they've got an ATTD Singapore for residents in that area soon, I think. But then, like you said, yeah, they've got ATTD next year, which I can't remember where it is, and the UK, which is in Scotland, isn't it? An application.
Glasgow, yes.
Glasgow, yeah. I've just been to Glasgow actually. But yeah, they open anytime next week, I guess. We'll share it out and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a great opportunity to meet people from all over the world, learn about diabetes and culture and experiences, and make good friends and contacts. And yeah, and what I liked about ISPAD as well is there's so many people, different backgrounds, different experiences, and like family members there as well. So it wasn't just a person living with diabetes; it was true representation. And DDoC encourages that, and different types of diabetes. So yeah, definitely go check them out. And thank you so much to everyone, Philip, hasn't it, and Rich and Tony as well for tonight. Joe and Caroline, Ola, Azra, Natalie, Alex, Tino was listening in the background, and of course
Ola,
yeah, and Gillian and Mark and Rich and Flipper and Tony for all your contributions, and everyone on the messages. So really helpful.
And can I just say one, just from me, to all of those that did attend these two conferences, all the tweets and stuff, because it's Twitter I look at for stuff. There was so much posted, particularly from ISPAD, and also at EASD, like Ola was doing an amazing job. There was Nat, there were others, and I'm not just
it's just because I follow them and they came as it, but there was so many links to things that was really good, because there's some conferences where I don't see as much. Now, I don't know if it's who goes, I don't follow, but it was really appreciated. So thank you guys. You did an amazing job at spreading the word.
Oh, no, honestly, yeah, well done to everyone, isn't it? It's everyone pays it forward in different ways. And yeah, it was great. And I know that we have to. Oh, there's Santiago. So hey, Santiago. I know we have to do a blog. Not have to. We do a blog as part of the scholarship, and it will be interesting to see everyone's blogs when they come out over the next couple of months, to kind of review their experience. All I can see, hand.
Hi, Tom. Yeah, I just wanted to I suppose, give a little feedback on DDocs, seeing as it was my first time that I applied, and I was a virtual attendance. So I have to just shout out to Dawn Adams and Grania Flynn from Diabetes. So the two of them in the past have encouraged me to apply. I'd say maybe 2 years ago, but it was never the right time. There were different things going on, and when I saw the application, they had extended the deadline. So I literally had applied on the last day in July. I just was like, oh, look, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. I just threw it in. It wasn't really perfect or anything. But I'd have to say it was a brilliant experience. I do love following conferences from even years ago before I would have been active on social media. So I loved the access to the scientific information. And I suppose I just want to encourage anyone, if you are looking at it and considering it, just to go for it, to apply. It really is a great experience. And thank you to Flipper there for the shout out on Twitter. It is a bit challenging trying to keep up on, especially on various social media. But I understand then for people who aren't there, you are hungry for the information, so it's important of sharing it as best you can. So yeah, I just want to give that basic little feedback, and just to encourage anyone who's considering to go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Orla.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you so much. That concludes tonight's diabetes chat, topic chat. So please go check out DDoC for more information, ddoc.org, and check out the upcoming scholarships, and all the amazing blogs and all the fantastic things from the voices. So back to
Thank
you.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Bye.
If anyone, guys. We are in open forum now, so if you do want to chat and hang out, you can. You have to jump off. That's fine. Let's end the stream there.